I am Jim Porter. Most people call me Jim Porter. On Facebook, I'm James Porter. I'm saying that because I'm responding to a comment on Facebook by video as opposed to responding with a whole bunch of text that gets gobbled up with all the other comments and that sort of thing. So I'm responding to David, but this is actually to someone else's post. They posted a picture of a gun with the barrel on backwards, and I'm sure you can find that picture anywhere and put a sassy comment over it. The sassy comment that this person put over it was finally figured out how pro-choicers would MAGA. So ha ha ha, if I'm a pro-choicer, which I am, and I had that gun, I'm so dumb I wouldn't notice that it was broken, and I would pull the trigger and I would kill myself, and that would make America great again. So hilarious, except that I know how memes are constructed. So I wrote back to the dude, cute, but that's just a meme in which anyone could put any enemy they want in the caption. Can you explain your enemy's position and why you disagree with it? Well, that guy hasn't done that yet, and I'm fine with him taking his time because I take my time responding to other people too. But a guy named David came in and said, allow me, which just had my heart twitterpating right away. And he wanted to explain what he thinks about the enemy, so to speak, which is my language, pro-choicers. And he put, pro-choicers are a very small minority who demand the right to kill their unborn child on a whim right up to the moment of birth. And then he continues, I disagree with it because all life is sacred and every unborn child represents the limitless potential of the future, so their lives deserve to be protected. And I felt I needed to make a response out of respect for a very important conversation, and I decided to do it by video. So here it is, my response to David on how pro-choicers would MAGA. You said, David, pro-choicers are a very small minority, but it turns out pro-choicers are the majority. The link is below. I've got two links below for you on that. You said, David, pro-choicers demand the right to kill their unborn child on a whim right up to the moment of the birth. And I'm going to say, David, I'm not sure I completely disagree. As a pro-choicer, I agree that a pregnant person and their doctor should decide whether or not to abort a baby, even up to the last second, if, for example, it could protect the pregnant person from delivery-related death or serious injury. Abortion is safer for the pregnant parent than carrying a baby to term. I quote a study here, an abstract of a study's conclusion on the topic. The risk of death, this is the quote, the risk of death associated with childbirth is approximately 14 times higher than that with abortion, and the link is below. If you're cool with taking away a woman's right to choose whether or not she sacrifices her own life, health, and safety, then I easily disagree with you. You also said you, quote, disagree, and then I put in, you said disagree with it, I think. So I put in, you disagree with a woman's right to choose abortion because all life is sacred. Yet you ignore the sacredness of the life of the pregnant person, or you didn't mention it, or you may just not have understood that the woman's life is just as sacred as that baby's life. By the way, a lot of people say the baby is innocent. There's a strong argument that we are all innocent. We are constructed as we develop through the process of nature, and we don't actually have the ability to choose every behavior. And even if we do, even if we have total free will, there are situations called dilemmas where there are no good choices, and that is exactly what we're talking about when a person becomes pregnant. So another thing about using the word sacred, If you are alluding to the concept that there is a God who loves little babies and determines what is sacred, there just isn't any evidence for a God as far as I've seen. And believe me, I've searched and searched to the point where I became agnostic as opposed to developing a stronger faith. The more I looked, the weaker my faith got. Even if I believed in a God, it could be one of many gods, not just the biblical God, which I presume is something you believe in. You may be an atheist, you may not be, but I suspect you believe in a God. But that is where like sacredness comes in. It's a religious concept. It can also be something that is more sacrosanct and deserving of being protected than other things. But I don't believe that that is the case. I just said my life is just as sacred as a baby's life, as an infant's life. Most most of the gods don't care about the little baby in any consistent ways. And if you're talking or if anybody's thinking about the God of the Bible, we all know what that God said. And I quote, from the Bible, happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. And of course, I put the links below. You finally said, and every unborn child represents the limitless potential of the future, so their lives deserve to be protected. And that's a wonderful sentiment. But frankly, that baby isn't there to represent something to you or to me. That baby is an organism like you and me. It's an embodiment of itself, and that's it. Anybody can have opinion about what it represents to them, but that's just using a baby to bolster our own worldview. We all do that, I confess, including me. I do that. But it's hard not to do when you see a baby. But that is not really valuing the baby. It's a selfish use of a living organism for our own emotional purposes. What a pregnancy is literally a bunch of cells that could possibly one day develop the ability to feel suffering and happiness. And that's all we need to care about, the ability for living organisms to feel suffering and happiness, and how to maximize happiness and minimize suffering. And counterintuitively to some people, the decision to have an abortion can minimize suffering. Not sure if it can maximize happiness. The pregnant person and all the rest of us have that same capability to feel suffering and happiness. So we have to consider ourselves, our consciences, and how we're going to feel with all of this based on the morality that we developed growing up, based on cultural influences that dictate our morality. We people that have been beyond the womb for a long enough time, we have aspirations. Fetuses don't. There's no evidence that a baby does. We have the knowledge of death. There's no evidence that the baby does. All morality comes down to is deciding what is the least cruel course to take when there is a dilemma at hand. And a dilemma is a situation where there are two decisions to make, and it's a very difficult decision. A pregnant person is automatically saddled as the only person forced to consider whether to carry a pregnancy to term or to terminate it. There's that gun again. She can use doctors to help her understand the factors that inform her decision, but it is impossible for her to be relieved of the burden of the decision itself. She suffers under such a dilemma. The blastocyst, which is what the bundle of cells is, the blastocyst, embryo, fetus, and baby, they don't have to suffer under such a decision. The woman not only has to decide to relieve her own health risk by, or whether or not to relieve her own health risk by aborting the pregnancy, she also has to decide whether euthanizing the fetus to protect it from suffering, say in the face of extreme health conditions of the unborn fetus, or even in the case that the woman believes that the baby will otherwise suffer in life, such as in a short, brutal life of starvation and violence, which is very prevalent in every country. She has to deal with whether that child is going to have a life of horror. And then she has to face the horrible chance of whether euthanizing that child is a good idea. That is not only the pregnant person's right to decide, it is also her burden that no one has the power to remove. This pro-choice mansplainer believes that it's a fantasy to pretend otherwise. Thank you, and I look forward to your reply, I think.